What is
It's a 7-day, 7 trial rally. You start off by the sea and you have to drive across the desert, and hopefully you beat people, or you don't make it and then someone comes out to get you. You still set a time though, so we'll see.
Oh my goodness me. Well, guys, whoever's joining us now, Temi is introduced. We are live. Yes, we are. And Temi is talking to us about, what's it actually called, Temi?
It's called the Morocco Challenge.
The Morocco Challenge. Please raise your hand if you've heard of this. He's raised 2 hands if you've done it.
God, if anyone's done it, I would love advice.
Well, do you know anyone that's done it, Temi?
No, I knew a few people, but they didn't make it back, sadly. God,
are you kidding?
I'm joking.
Oh, that was more. First of all, you should all know I believe anything really within reason people tell me. So, just bear that in mind as we go into today's chat. We've still got a few people joining us, but as it's 2 minutes past 5, and I was a moment late for this, guys, who's joining us to talk about self-coaching. I've had to do some serious self-coaching myself in the last few minutes because I could not get Zoom to help me out and get into this bloody thing. So I'm here now anyways. I tell you what, let's just do a quick introduction before we jump into this topic of self-coaching, which is one I absolutely love. I'll quickly introduce myself to all of you that don't know who I am. My name is Shelley Lavery. I am one of the founders of Jiminy. Jiminy is a coaching platform, really. I mean, it was born from my love of coaching salespeople, but also my challenges with it. So we help that by basically making visible all of the great things that goes on the sales floor or remotely, so that as sales leaders, we can improve and make things better. So that's me, and I'm going to be hosting today's beautiful panel. Who wants to introduce themselves first? Ben's smiling, and look, Ben, I know has been away. He's back fresh from a trip in the Marbella area. Come on, Ben.
It was lovely. Been very relaxed and ready for this webinar.
Are you? Good.
I still got my summer shirt on. I'm Ben Smith. I'm the Director of Business Development at ReachDesk. I joined ReachDesk 4 years ago now, started as a BDR and have been very lucky to scale with the company. Prior to that, I used to be a professional ice skater, so I feel like I've got some value I might be able to add to this conversation when it comes to self-coaching. Did it as an ice skater and did it as a BDR, progressing to where I am today. ReachDesk, what is ReachDesk? It is a direct mail and gifting platform, helping sales and marketing teams basically send out really nice things to prospects and customers to increase engagement within your accounts, maybe using some account-based marketing strategies. That's a little summary of what ReachDesk is and who I am.
Love ReachDesk. Love being able to create wow moments in the sales process and beyond. It's absolutely brilliant. Make it easy to do so. And Alex, your first webinar today, I think.
It is my first webinar, so thank you so much for having me. Well, do you know what? Not my first webinar. I've attended plenty, but it's my first one as a panelist.
A panelist. Sorry, I should have made that clear. You're right, as a panelist.
So yeah, thank you for having me. So yeah, I'm Alex. I've been with Aircall for nearly 2 years as part of the sales team. I am an AE now, but I started in business development roles, and I think, because it was my first proper job out of uni, I've had to do a lot of self-coaching and using kind of what my managers and mentors have offered me to build out like what I want from my career and just generally day to day how to get better at what I do. Anyone that's not familiar with Aircall as well, we offer a cloud telephony solution, so a phone system which is used by sales and support teams. And I think it was good to kind of team up with Jiminy on this one, because a lot of what we can help with is kind of coaching, whether that's reporting on what's going on in the phones, what's going right, what's going wrong, but also just being able to listen back, being able to hop in, that sort of thing. So these are all things that I've used myself. And so hopefully that's a perspective I'll be able to give today.
That's awesome. Thank you, Alex. And the desert traveller himself.
Gosh, really hope that's not one nickname that sticks. But yes, I'm Temi. I'm the commercial director at the Early Careers Company and the co-founder of Silk Pickling. The Early Careers Company is a DEI strategy firm. We specialize in talent acquisition and social mobility review. So we analyze people, processes, and policies to basically understand where the gaps are in your social mobility and your DEI strategy. And then Silk Pickling is my little baby. It's a food business I run alongside one of my best friends. And we specialize in flavored pickling liquids, and we're kind of selling across Europe and across the UK. So it's my two little nest eggs.
I didn't know that. I didn't know you was pickling things. What do you pickle?
I'm full of surprises, Shelley. Or whatever you want. The idea is you have as many flavors as we have. We have 6 flavors at the moment, and then you pickle anything really. My favorite thing to pickle at the moment is pineapples in Scotch bonnet and lemon. I would recommend
pineapple.
Trust me, it's better than it sounds. It tastes better than it sounds.
I don't know about you two, but I'm not sure.
Give it a try. And
I'll give it a try. But yeah, I'm open-minded. I'll give it a whirl. So look, we're going to talk about self-coaching. And I thought it might be a useful place for us to start in thinking about what we mean by it, really. So I'll share my perspective with you three, and if you want to add anything to it. Someone once described coaching to me as movement. A good pal of mine, Gavin, who I used to do a coaching course with, he was the one that introduced me to the idea of coaching as movement, which really stuck with me. I think probably because it's quite visual, and I can imagine being sort of somewhere, potentially feeling a bit stuck somewhere and needing to get somewhere else. And that idea that coaching is about that journey from where you are to where you want to be. So I always liked that line. That's how I kind of define it in my mind. But when I think about self-coaching, the first thing I think about is this, some people call it the inner voice in your head, your private voice. But the things that you're saying to yourself hundreds of times an hour. And I was listening to a TED talk once where a chap was talking about, I think he named it the private voice. And he sort of positioned it as the only voice that's with you your entire life, from the minute you're born till you die. Which first of all made me go, oh yeah, of course, yeah, that's right. That it is that powerful. It's that, it's that embedded with us. And he said, you can have it working for you, or you can have it working against you. And there's the choice that we need to make. And what it did, and this was about 3 or 4 years ago now, was it really made me reflect on how I talk to myself, which I'd never considered in that way before. How I would support, coach, help, and guide others versus how I sort of reflect and talk to myself, that were very different. And he said, right at the end, he said, imagine that today, when you were in the office, at some moment, your inner thoughts, your private voice was literally scrolling across the screen or across the whiteboard. How would that make you feel? Would you feel proud of it, of how you were talking to yourself, or would you just want to let the ground to swallow you up? Which I thought was interesting. Thoughts from you guys. Temi, did that trigger anything for you?
A little bit. A little bit. It was something I want to mull over a little bit longer, if that's all right. Come back to me.
You mull away. What about you, Alex or Ben? Did it make you think of anything? Do you define it differently?
Yeah, I would say that definitely coaching, and self-coaching specifically for me, is all about mindset, and about basically how you see yourself, whether you think I can learn from this and I can get something from it. It's about kind of your confidence, but yeah, mainly about like how you're speaking to yourself, whether you believe in yourself ultimately to get through like a difficult situation or just a difficult day. I think self-coaching comes into that completely.
And I look forward to touching on that a little bit more with you, because I know you've got some. I think when I first met you, Alex, I was sort of quite pleasantly surprised about how you think about coaching yourself, because I think the typical go-to is when we think about self-coaching, we think about how we coach ourselves from a skill perspective, like how am I going to get better at my sales skills? But what was really great about listening to you was actually about, you know, how do I coach the mindset? How do I actually start from there so that everything else is a benefit moving forward? But Temi, you're a leader of a team. Share with us a bit about how you think about creating an environment for self-coaching to thrive, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you want to make sure you can build out kind of the core pillars of what I call intrinsic motivation. So what does each individual really care about, right? If you don't understand what will have a significant impact on a person, there's no way you can get them to self-coach. And so it's basically understanding that conversation and empowering them to have the space where they can tell me, right, Temi, this is what I care about, this is what I want to achieve. And then we can use that to build the self-coaching from there. Because although for us, I guess on this panel, self-coaching is something that we, you know, have taught ourselves and we've developed over time, it's something that does need to be taught and developed with the team you work with. And so giving them the space to be able to open up and educate you on what matters to them is kind of how I start.
Do you ever find that you open up those conversations with somebody and you're kind of met with a bit of a blank face? Like there might be some people listening today thinking, God, if my manager asked me what I want, what my motivations are, where I want to be, I think, God, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it happens all the time. And I think the important thing there is also to be a little bit vulnerable yourself, right? These are people you're working with, your colleagues, they have their hopes and dreams, their aspirations, and also showing them that it's okay to not know what you want in the moment, right? Like let's discuss it together. It's a partnership more than it's a manager and a subordinate, right? It should be, how can we both help each other? One, figure out what we individually want, what we want as a team, and how we work together.
Have you ever faced that, Ben? Just that situation where you're trying to understand someone's motives and it's just like, I'm not sure, it's not my first job, I'm just trying to get good at my job.
Yeah,
Do you know where I want to go?
Yeah, it's tough. I think, especially personally, I've always been quite self-motivated, driven, and understood where I want to go. And I think the moment that I've been sort of unhappy, I've been fortunate enough to be able to take myself out of the situation I'm in and throw myself and take a risk and put myself in a different situation. So I think as a manager, or when I transitioned into a manager, I really struggled with that when somebody would come to me and would say, I just don't know where I want to go. Because for me, I struggle to understand somebody that wouldn't know where they want to go. So I think I've had to take a step back as a manager and think about other situations in my life that I've been unsure of and how I felt in that moment, and then how I kind of relied on other people and looked to other people to help me out of those situations. And I think you have to help the other person take a step back to also think about what it is and break it down into small bits about what they really enjoy in this role and might not even be in this role, to then help create a pathway and guide them and help them get the support that they need to be able to be the person they want to be, move in the direction they want to move into, and progress in the way that they want to progress.
Interesting. It's fascinating to hear about how you could almost potentially struggle to empathize with someone who thinks very differently about those things to how you do. And I think the point you originally made, Temi, about it is about empathy and it is about vulnerability. Tell us more about that when you talk about vulnerability and why that's important from creating an environment where self-coaching can thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I found with the vulnerability piece is that you want to create an environment where people aren't afraid to fail, and it's completely okay as long as you're failing forward. I know that's such a cliche tech phrase to use, right? Everyone has to fail forward, but it's true. You want to build an environment where people.
Did you just say fail forward?
Fail forward, yeah.
That's the first time. That is the first. Have you ever heard that, Alex? Ben? First time I've ever heard. It can't be that much of a cliche, unless I'm under a rock most of the day. So
I'll claim that I introduced it to you, so I'll have that under my belt. But yeah, the idea is the opportunity to fail forward, and to feel comfortable in doing so. Right, I think you as a leader showing that you can also be vulnerable, and showing that, you know, what I like to do with my team is show them that I'm not perfect either. I'm still learning and still improving and still coaching myself on a daily basis, and giving them that visibility and that personal vulnerability allows them to then say, well, you know what, I'm more than happy to self-coach and give it a try. And if I do make a mistake, Tammy's there to support me, or, you know, my manager's there to support me, and I can develop and grow from that. So
what do you actually do to show them that you're work in progress, for want of a better way of putting it?
God, it's I think it's tricky to distill it into one thing. I try and essentially just infuse it into who I am as a leader and a person, right? So, you know, if we've had a bad quarter, I'll first tell the team, look, where things went wrong from my side, where I could have improved, where I've seen gaps in my own learning and knowledge, and then we'll turn it into an open forum. So, guys, look, where do you think you could personally improve? What are issues you face? And having that openness from myself first and foremost, and not putting the blame on my team for mistakes, or for, you know, for us not necessarily maybe hitting a goal for 1 month or a quarter or something like that, helps ease that transition into them then opening up to me and saying, hey, look, Tammy, this is where I'm at, this is my thoughts, and this is what I want to do going forward. And then it becomes an open discussion.
Yeah, you made me think about something then when you said that, because I spoke to someone, it was a week or 2 weeks ago, who is in sales and had a particularly bad March. And the thing that they really sort of struggled with was a sort of feeling of sort of personally let themselves down, sort of personal failure, I suppose. But also it sounded like that the manager was quite vocal and visibly disappointed with the person as well. And I guess the reason you just made me think about that is because that's hard to navigate, isn't it? As a performer, you're dealing with your own reaction to your performance and what's happened, but you're also absorbing it from somebody else who you I hope look up to, admire, and want to also do an equally good job for. How do we self-coach through that? What advice would we give? I'm talking to you all just generally here, but have you got any thoughts on how someone sort of can try to help themselves self-coach through that quite complex dynamic, I think, which I imagine many will have faced or will?
I think it's really interesting what you both said there, just about kind of like being vulnerable and being able to make it like a safe space to like fail forward, that sort of thing. Because I think essentially what you're doing there is giving people the language to speak about like what they want. And I know that when I first came into what is essentially like my first job out of uni, like early careers, don't know what I want to do, being able to like hear other people's stories and hear the way that they describe what they want to do, like what they're doing day to day and that sort of thing. Obviously, you take a little bit of every conversation you have, and having a conversation with your manager where you're seeing even them doing that can be really impactful.
I completely agree. Alex, have you ever found yourself in a position where you've maybe not had the best experience, not the best month, best quarter, you feel like you've let yourself down or it's gone wrong, but you've also feel like, oh, my manager or someone that you're close to, you see as a role model in the team, is also reflecting that?
I think it's always interesting when you're putting maybe a bit of pressure on yourself and you're starting to feel a bit stressed maybe towards the end of the month, or I find like kind of week 3 is where you either cut it or you don't. That's when I know I shouldn't think about that, to be honest, but anyway, that's by the by, we're on a webinar now. I think basically what it is if I'm looking at the manager who their numbers is my numbers and they're not stressing out and they're not flapping, I can take that and I take that by example, and people really do kind of emulate what they see. So a manager who they can see that I'm not hitting my numbers, and I know that it's going to affect how much they take home, and they're not stressing out because they believe in me probably more than I did myself when I initially started. That kind of slowly builds up that confidence and means that I can see it as a learning experience, as a coaching experience. And to be honest, being able to get through those lean months, shall we call them, is really, really important, because sales is not always just going to be a straight upward curve, is it? Like, you are going to have those times, and the people that will stick around are the ones that are able to glide through it and learn from it and not get too stressed.
And I do think it's wonderful if we've got leaders who are able to maintain that composure and sort of set that standard of how to react and respond when things aren't necessarily going our way. I think it's challenging when we haven't. But I think what you made me think about then, Alex, was you have to sort of separate the person's emotion, as in your manager emotion, from what they're actually telling you. So if there's feedback wrapped up in this is how we're going to get better, but it's wrapped up in the emotion of how they're feeling about it. And we've got to be able to sort of separate those two, because you're right, the emotion is coming from not just what you may have done individually, but the pressure that they're feeling more generally in their role, and maybe even personally as well. And so being able to focus on the things that we can control, which is the actual feedback, the tangible things I can do differently, and trying to sort of leave that outside of the line, the emotion part. Probably easier said than done, but it's good to recognize that they are two different things, you know. Temi, thinking about that a bit more, you've talked there about vulnerability. You've talked about really understanding the motives of the person, really. So you kind of make me think, you know, person before player sort of thing, right? The human side of things. Are there any sort of there's any sort of traps that we've got to be careful, you think, from a leadership point of view, not to fall into, to, you know, make sure that this doesn't happen? And this question sort of comes off the back of thinking about that pull on targets and results and that sort of pressure. Where are the sort of pitfalls you think that we might have to think about or be aware of, so that we can, you know, try our best to avoid them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a good thing to do for the most part. I think that the pitfalls come then when it's time to actually drill into data and numbers, right? And again, it's more about, if you've built that environment of vulnerability, right? It shouldn't really happen, but it can. It's about understanding, right? Have they done everything they could have done in that time frame? Not everything they could have done for them as a person in general. It could be that quarter something else had happened in life, something had gone on. Had they done the best they could possibly do in that space, and then approach quarterly reviews in that fashion, or one-to-ones in that fashion? So although they may be below target, it's an understanding of why they're there, work through them with that. Obviously the pitfalls can be that some people will exploit that, but again, if you build a team that buys into that and kind of shares those characteristics of, you know, understanding and trust and wanting to grow and develop, then that's less of a problem and shouldn't be as much of a pitfall, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, and just speaks to how important those values are. And we spoke a bit about, Alex, when we chatted before, about almost sort of how important it is that in terms of the decisions that we make about the companies that we join, that are going to reflect what's important to us. And you sort of spoke to me a bit more about where sort of self-coaching had come from you personally, about mindset, which I found quite fascinating. Could you talk to us all a bit about that?
Yeah, so I feel like for me, self-coaching looks like two different things. So there's the kind of operational side of it. So have I got the right tools in place in order to be able to do my job properly, listen and feedback and stuff like that? Am I in the right environment to be doing that? But also, am I in an organization which supports me in my growth? So I came into Aircall as an SDR, which is seen as definitely an early careers kind of role. And I remember one of my managers said to me, if you're still in this role in a year and a half, then I've failed you, because my job, as well as helping you to hit your target, is also to get you to where you want to be in, and whether that's, in an AE role or a CS role or something completely different within Aircall, which does happen, to be honest. People go all over the place from SDR, BDR roles in Aircall. It's being able to not only give them the opportunity to move into these roles, but also the opportunity to understand like what you want and how to get there. So working out like what direction you want to go in, what skills are interesting, what skills you need, how to lean into what you already have and hone those skills and polish them up. And that being such a integral part to like my one-to-ones and stuff has definitely helped me to focus on like what I want. And once I decided I wanted to be an AE, it was just a case of, right, okay, well, I'm gonna practice all of these different things, and hopefully when a role comes up, then I'll be ready for it. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
So when you're thinking about that, when you're thinking about it from two perspectives, you're thinking about how I'm developing a skill set that enables me then to move on with my career. So just sticking with that for a moment, when it comes to sort of self-coaching and getting into it, because you are now an AE, I believe, aren't you? You are, aren't you?
Yeah.
So when you were sort of self-coaching in those sort of 12 to 18 months beforehand on the skill set, is there anything you could share that's helpful? I mean, I imagine we've got sort of many aspiring AEs on the phone now, or people that are starting their BD career, SDR career, and wanting to go to other places that may want to start developing that skill set and be able to self-coach. What's your advice to them around that?
Yeah, so I think it's like something that was really helpful to me was when my manager was like, well, if you want to look like an AE as a BDR, then maybe doing your notes a certain way, finding out what's helpful to the AEs at the moment, you'll just kind of get into the habit of doing things that way. It's never going to do you any harm. And it just means that every time you have a phone call that's, you know, converts into something, you don't leave it there. And having that mindset of like, I'm doing this because I want to get good at this in order to do the next thing, rather than kind of being impatient and wanting to move on. I think that was really helpful to me in terms of getting better in my day-to-day and booking demos and stuff. And then now, because I know what kind of things that AEs are looking for. So when I came into the AE role with Aircall, I knew kind of what had helped the AEs in the past, because I've been doing that for a while, and that was advice from my manager when I was BDR.
Oh, that's really useful. Ben, just curious how you think about that, because I imagine you've got people in your team that you're training up and moving on, and they want to do similar to what Alex has done. How do you sort of create space for them to sort of self-coach and develop those skills in preparation for that role?
Yeah, I think you always want to be doing the job or the next job that you want to move into before you're doing it. So Alex's example there of doing the notes, and you know, even starting to think about writing that follow-up email from when you do that first demo call. It's a really good opportunity to give yourself to be demonstrating that you can do that next role before you move into it. So it's kind of when sparks fly and there's an opportunity present, you can kind of come to the table and say, look, these are the things that I've been doing already to show that I'm ready to move into that role. And then I think you just want to make your current role look so easy that it just looks effortless to everyone else. And when it looks effortless to everyone else, it just instills such a confidence in other people that you can do the next thing well as well. And then it's always important to remember that whenever anybody moves into that next role, they don't have a clue of what they're doing really. You know, you can prepare yourself so much for that next opportunity, but you've never done it before. And I think the question people often get asked is, well, how do you know that you can do this? And by preparing yourself as much as you can and doing what Alex did, it really sets you in a good example and a good light to be able to demonstrate all the things that you're trying to do within your current role to set you up for success for the next one.
It was interesting what you said about effortless, looking effortless. What does that mean? Like, what does effortless look like, Ben?
I'm going to bring my ice skating days into this, but if you go and watch a show and you watch a performance, you don't want to be on the edge of your seat because somebody's falling over, they're forgetting their lines. You know, it's cringeworthy to get through that performance. It makes you not be able to enjoy it as much. You want to have confidence that that performer is going to be able to do really well in that show and that performance, and it looks effortless. And I think it's like any other job really. You know, we're kind of all performing, we're all on show, on display, turning up to be the best that we can be. And you want to instill that confidence and kind of look effortless while you're doing it. So just get so good at doing what you do that it looks effortless to other people, even if it isn't, but you've practiced it enough that you kind of got that muscle memory there to make it look effortless.
Yeah, it's almost having that ability to remain so focused and centered, regardless as to what chaos is going on in the environment around you. Just being able to come in every day and perform, to use your word, perform like an ice skater. I do one of my most favorite things to do with our BD team when they're wanting to think about the next role for them within the AE team for their self-coaching is I do an exercise called the discovery card exercise. I'll share this in case this is useful for anybody. And basically what I do is it's role play, but I try to make it better than two people in a room role playing. I create a persona and I create a discovery card, and it's normally got anywhere between 10 and 14 pieces of information on the card. And I will then role play that with, say, Mike, who's an aspiring AE here. And Mike's job is to uncover as many of those 14 things as he can through the discovery conversation. And the reason I find it particularly helpful for them is because what they get in that scenario that they don't get in the real world of selling is, oh, that was all the things I could have found out, and I found out that. And then we're able to actually discuss, and he's able to self-coach around what could I have done, what could I have said, where could I have taken it in order to be able to have moved it into a different direction and uncovered more information. So that discovery card exercise is quite useful. And if anyone listening wants a copy of some of them so they can sort of replicate them for their own world, then definitely give me a shout and I can pop some over. So that's a nice bit on skill set, Alex, but talk to us a little bit more about the mindset piece.
Yeah, sure. So we're very lucky that we have sessions with Chris from Sales Psyche. I don't know if you guys, like, even if you don't have sessions with him, you might have seen him on LinkedIn. It's a big name on LinkedIn. And he does a lot about like mindset and like managing what you want to do with your career, but also just kind of like day-to-day like stress and pressure and stuff like that. I found that in like sessions with him, I learned a lot more about myself that I never really knew about before. So for example, he kind of taught me about this idea of like limiting beliefs, something that I'd not heard of before. And also the idea of kind of like a scarcity mindset. So this idea that firstly, limiting beliefs, I understand it to be, if I think X of myself, like if I think I can achieve this, but I can't do something else, then you're almost certainly right. And you're going to stop yourself even trying to get to the point where you would be able to do that. So if you think in my career, I'm only going to get to this point and I'll be glad to get there, then that's probably where you'll end up, which is, you know, if you're not very ambitious, then that's fine and you're happy with that. But if you're negative about that and you're like, oh, I'm only ever going to get to there, that limiting belief is what's stopping you. And then the other thing that I found really, really good for like just my own mindset and like for like when I'm self-coaching, when I'm trying to learn from my mistakes, is this kind of scarcity mindset and like abundance mindset way of framing things. So a lot of the time we worry about if something doesn't go right, that's the only opportunity you're ever going to get to achieve that, to do that, to, you know, close that deal, whatever it may be. Whereas if you've got an abundance mindset, you think it's easier to get over it because you just believe inherently in yourself that you'll find something else and that also you'll get to where you want to be. Like, you've just got to kind of have that mindset. It's like it's about being positive, really, at the end of the day. But it's like you can get really focused and bogged down in something that's not really going to happen if you've got a scarcity mindset, because you don't go looking for other things in the meantime. Whereas if you've got this abundance mindset, you just think like, there's more out there. I will get to where I need to be. I'm going to get some knocks on the way, because not everything is meant to be. Not every deal is meant to close. You can spend hours and hours and hours on something and it's still not going to close, just even though you think you deserve it. But yeah, I think that's really, really helped me to understand that like everything I do is a learning opportunity, and there's plenty more out there. And because of the richness of experience of having that, what I would have thought of as a negative experience, where I've not got the outcome that I necessarily wanted, I have learned from it at least. And then next time I'll be able to do better and maybe get more of a positive outcome.
I love that idea of the abundance versus scarcity mindset. Because even when you think about it in terms of a target, the team missed this quarter's target. Well, there's another target that we can have a shot at now, so let's move on. It's a bit like that thing around, look, let's not be defined by our numbers, because the number is on the whiteboard for a minute and then it's wiped back down again. But we can be defined by what you've talked there about, Alex, around how we approach things and what we want to work on to get better. And I think I said when I chatted with you, Temi, about, particularly in sales, we can do an awful lot of prescribing. This is the way that we're going to sell, the process, the territories, the targets. And it doesn't leave a huge amount of room for autonomy. But within autonomy is where there is such opportunity for that feeling of accomplishment, and I've owned it, and, I'm in control and in charge of my destiny feeling. But I understand that there is that balance of helping people understand where that time should be going. How do you think about that, Ben? How do you guide your team on where their self-coaching time should go generally?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they focus on self-coaching, they focus on the things that I need to get better at to get to a good level of being able to do them. And actually, sometimes you need to focus on what are the things that you're already good at, already really good at, and how do you get better at them to get to your goals and achieve what you want to be achieving. I think, it's really hard for everyone to be a master of everything. And if you work on everything, then you're going to burn yourself out quite quickly. But if you work on the things that you enjoy doing and get better at those things, then you can still achieve your goals and become a master in a certain area. So I think when you look at the time, it's looking at the things which are going to make the biggest impact. You're going to have the biggest impact of the things that you need to work out, because if you don't do them, then perhaps that's in your way of achieving what you want to achieve, but also realizing the things that you're really good at, the things you really enjoy, and how can you get better at those things as well, and putting as much energy into that as the things which perhaps you're not good at as well.
I really like that, because obviously taking the time to invest in your personal development on something you don't like doing is never going to be the best use of anybody's time, really, unless it was like critical. I think that's a really interesting way of putting it. What was quite impressive about how you think about it, Ben, is from the perspective of, and I'm not going to use the exactly right words here, but the way I interpret what you say is there are the skills that you need to be really good at your job, but there are also the characteristics that you need to be really good at your job, right? And there's a fantastic podcast, TED Talk, that I would recommend everyone to listen to by a chap called Brett Ledbetter. We'll share it after the webinar, but he talks about the inner coach, and he talks about the impact of the character fueling the process, the skills, which drives the result, and how important the character is. So you just talk to us a little bit about that. So, because whether we're do it individually or whether there's leaders on the phone that want to think about it for their team, how do you think about that, and how have you sort of embedded that into your team?
Yeah, I think it comes back to what we spoke about a little bit already, and that's again, like the failing forwards and being prepared to fail. I think Steve Jobs has a great quote around if you something you want to do along the lines of, if you don't fail, then you're never improving. And it's so important to be making those mistakes. The more mistakes you make, the more you learn. And I think just really encourage people to try new things. You know, be comfortable, or be comfortable being uncomfortable. Can you set yourself a challenge or a goal for the month of something which you find really uncomfortable now? Perhaps that's going on a webinar and speaking to loads of people and doing that time and time again so that it becomes comfortable. I remember when I was at BDR, I had the opportunity to go and sit at a round table with the founder of G2, and I was sat there with my cup of tea, being all nervous, trying to pitch Reach Desk, and the tea was going everywhere apart from my mouth. So I was like really, really nervous. But I did 10 more of those round tables, and suddenly I was able to have a conversation, eat food in front of people, and maybe a different person. And it was great to be able to reflect and look back and think, wow, I was so nervous in that situation, but now I can look back and laugh on it and think, wow, that's just a great improvement that I've made there. So yeah, I think failing and learning is really important.
Great. There's are any of you familiar with the Grow model?
I love that model. It's great for being a leader and self-coaching.
Yeah, I'd really recommend that as a takeaway for folk. There's a great model, Grow. Do you remember what they stand for, Ben?
Yeah, so what is the goal? Am I right saying Grow model? Goal, what's the reality? What are your options? And then what are you going to do about it?
Exactly. And that, even if you're stuck in a moment of something, just taking a step back, use that model. I mean, if you Google Grow model, it'll come up with a whole load of Grow-based questions that can help you self-navigate your way from where you are to where you want to be. And it's a really, really powerful thing to be able to do. And it's amazing as leaders to be able to help create that culture for our teams, because it creates that really, again, autonomy, but that feeling of independence as well. Within our people. So we've only got a few minutes left. God, that flew by, didn't it? Absolutely flew by. Are there any questions out there, Meg? Is there anyone that's got any thoughts they want to share? Questions, comments, anything they do to self-coach that would be useful for the rest of us to hear? Come on, there must be somebody. I don't think there is, chaps and chapesses. I think that is all. Well, any final thoughts from you, Temi? What's been useful? That's always my favourite coaching question at the end of any session. What's been useful?
Oh, what's been useful? Everything. Honestly, first of all, hearing Ben and Alex's perspectives on self-coaching is really insightful. And it's from two different angles as well. Obviously, Ben looking at it from a leadership point of view, and that's something I can take a lot from, and then Alex from kind of an individual contributor. So it's something I can look for in my own team as well. So I think it's been quite eye-opening, and I hope I've been able to share some insight as well, even if it's just a tiny bit.
Thank you, Temi. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I think I'll just say, Alex, how you talk about mindset, and I think that's been really, really valuable. It's something which I just always need to improve at myself. And yeah, it's been great hearing your journey from SDR to AE and how you've adopted the mindset to be able to get you there.
Alex?
Honestly, this has all just been so helpful. I'm going to go away and Google Grow model now and see what I can do with it. So I'll update you guys. I'll let you know. But yeah, thank you so much for having us, Shelley.
Our pleasure. Thank you all for your time and for joining us, and for everyone who joined live on air, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for being with us, and hope to see you at another webinar or event very soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye.